On this date, 20 years ago, the Detroit Pistons did the unthinkable, going into the finals against the star-studded Lakers, led by two Pantheon-caliber legends in Kobe and Shaq. The Pistons were heavy underdogs, a team that was perceived as being starless, going against a team that on paper looked like a dream team, but was anything but in reality. The Pistons shook up the basketball world with a dominant Game 1, but no one saw what was to come about a week later when they beat the Lakers 100-87 to win Motown its first championship since 1990. This video will take us back in time, to a time that no one thought highly of them, but in retrospect, are now widely admired for their success in 04 and beyond. A team in the truest sense of the word. Hey guys, this is Cyber TV, aka Kevin. I'm just some random guy on the internet with a passion for sports. My main focus is on the NBA and NFL, but I like them all, especially the sleeping giant that is rugby. Leave a like and sub as it will help the algorithm out, and let's begin. So as I mentioned in my intro, the mid-2000s Pistons are highly regarded nowadays as a model team that built by shrewd team building, a team that shook up the NBA world, but then were seen as legitimate contenders for the next 4 seasons. A team that at one point was on pace to challenge the 96 Bulls' 72-10 record. A team that challenged the two best teams of the post-Bulls era, in my opinion at least, better than really any other team did, nearly going back-to-back against them. The Pistons of that era were low on superstar talent, but very high on quality talent, and their skill sets and personality meshed extremely well with each other and with the city of Detroit. But before they were established as one of the best teams of the century, they were a ragtag group of troubled and underappreciated players. Let's begin with their point guard. Before he became the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, Chauncey Billups was a Hall of Fame guard, but in the beginning he showed little signs of that as he constantly was moved around. The Celtics drafted the talented guard out of Colorado with the 3rd pick in 1997, and while he showed flashes, he also showed inconsistency and had issues gelling with the coaching staff, so they shipped him off to Toronto, where he pretty much maintained his production but on lower efficiency. In the lockout 1999 season, he was traded to the Nuggets, where his play continued to unimpress, getting sent to the Magic a year later, where he never played a game for them but was still in a team photo. Bet you didn't know that, by the way. I didn't. And by then, Billups was seen as a bust in NBA circles. But things started to trend upwards for Billups when he was signed by the Timberwolves to be their backup point guard. Under the tutelage of former All-Star and starting point guard Brandon Terrell, Billups had an experienced vet to steer him the right way, and in response, Billups showed promise during the games where Terrell was out, averaging about 13 points, 3 boards, and 5 dimes on 54 true shooting percentage in 2001, and about 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 dimes on 56.5 true shooting percentage in 2002 as a starter. The 2002 Timberwolves went 32-22 with Billups as a starter, a 48.5 win pace, and he was starting to blossom into a very good player. Billups wanted to stay with the Wolves, but they wanted Brandon to be their starter, who never played again after 2002. So Billups went to the Pistons, who actually wanted him. While I'm at it, I do wonder how different NBA history goes if the Wolves wanted to keep Billups. In the 2003 season, Billups was elite, leading the Pistons to a 50-32 record and overcoming a 1-3 deficit to beat the Magic. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they were swept by the Nets. So that's the story of their point guard. The story of Rip Hamilton heading into the 2004 season had less bumps, as he became an 18 points per game guy in his second season. That's basically like 20 to 23 in today's game, and he did it while spending half the season as a reserve. Hamilton was drafted by the Wizards with the 7th pick of the 1999 draft, and spent his last year there as Michael Jordan's running mate. But heading into the 2003 season, the Wizards shipped Hamilton to the Pistons. Again, how different would things have been had he stayed? Would Kobe have started his finals career 4-0? Was Jordan thinking 2 steps ahead? I'm just kidding. But there's probably more validity in that than Jordan being threatened by someone with a 3-4, now 3-6 finals record. As for Tayshaun Prince, we know him as one of the best perimeter defenders ever. His incredible size and length made him a menace on that side of the floor, but he wasn't picked in the 2002 draft until the Pistons were available with the 23rd pick. Part of that was because he was raw on offense, even after 4 years of college ball at Kentucky. But the Pistons were not looking for offense when they selected him. The fourth member of the starting five was the brash and outspoken Rasheed Wallace. Unlike the rest of the cast, Wallace was actually very highly regarded coming out of high school and made a few All-Star teams heading into the 2004 season. But Wallace was still on the Blazers at the start of the season. Around the All-Star break, Wallace was traded to the Hawks, where he played only one game for them, but shortly afterwards, he was traded to the Pistons. More on that later. But now talk about the last, but certainly not least important member of the core five, Big Ben Wallace. Way before he was the Minister of Defense for the United Kingdom, Ben Wallace was the feared Minister of Defense for the Detroit Pistons. But like Billups, the road to Pistons immortality was one of many twists and turns even before going pro. Wallace played for a community college before transferring to Virginia Union, which is where Charles Oakley played his college ball and where he suggested Wallace play for when discovering him at a 1991 camp where he became Wallace's mentor. The undersized Wallace had a limited offensive game, which is how he went undrafted in arguably the greatest and deepest draft in NBA history. Wallace played one game for a club in Italy before the Washington Bullets gave him a chance, playing 34 games his rookie year but 0 starts. Things didn't change much in the following 2 seasons, but then in the 2000 season he was traded to the Magic, where he finally got his break as a full-time starter. This was actually the first time him and Billups were on the same team. Bet you didn't notice earlier that Wallace was behind him in that picture, but neither stayed with the Magic for long, as Wallace was sent to the Pistons the following season. Wallace had a solid first year with the Pistons, but it was his second year where he caught the league's attention, leading the league in rebounds and blocks and winning his first of 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. What he lacked in offense, he made up for completely on defense, being strong enough and athletic enough to protect the paint, guard multiple positions, and be an overall defensive menace in any era of basketball. And the man responsible for coaching them was Larry Brown. Brown was a well-established coach up until this point and had coached several great teams, but up until this point, none of them had won it all. He won a lot and was known as a tough and effective coach. But that ring was what prevented him from being in any greatest coach ever convo. The Pistons signed him as their head coach heading into the 2004 season, replacing Rick Carlisle, who went to Indiana. The man responsible for building this team was Joe Dumars, the link between the Bad Boys Pistons of the late 80s, early 90s, and the mid-2000s Pistons. Dumars was a Hall of Famer as a player and as an executive. He also contributed to signing Mameo Core and Corliss Williamson, who were key contributors to the mid-2000s Pistons. Individually, these players were all good, all-star, and even Hall of Fame caliber, but none of them will be mistaken for superstars. And unfortunately, because of that, many underestimated what was brewing when the Pistons acquired Rasheed Wallace from the Hawks. Before handing him, the Pistons went 15-32 in 2003 and were on pace to go 50-32 again in 2004. But in 22 games with the Rasheed Wallace, the 2004 Pistons went 17-5, a 63-win pace. Their defense went from allowing a suffocating 86.8 before signing Wallace, a defense rating of 99.1, to an even more suffocating 78 points per game in the 22 games he played, a defensive rating of 90. This puts them in comparable territory to the 1963 Celtics. And this continued well into the playoffs as the Pistons gave up 80.7 points per game, a defensive rating of 93.1, as they gave every team and every star perimeter player fits. By adding Rasheed into the mix, it put Okur, not known for his defensive prowess, on the bench where he could be instant offense off the bench. It gave the Pistons a flexible and dominant starting five of guys that are defense first and can play team basketball. While Billups took a while before developing into a true floor general, his frame allowed him to be a menace on defense. Rip was an off-ball master who also excelled on defense, and Rasheed Wallace was a stretch four also known for his defense and tenacity. Larry Brown was the perfect coach for this team as he preferred tough-minded veterans. In retrospect, it's shocking to me that so many slept on them, but heading to the finals against the Dynasty Lakers, no one really gave them a chance. They had the perfect roster to neutralize an injured, dysfunctional Lakers squad, and that was apparent in a surprising Game 1 blowout win. The Pistons won 87-75. Shaq was uber efficient, scoring 34 points on 16 shots and 12 free throw attempts. Kobe was inefficient, scoring 25 on 27 shots and 4 free throw attempts. And the rest of the Lakers scored 16 points on 30 shots and 2 free throw attempts. What the Pistons had going for them was Ben Wallace being one of the few players in league history that could respectively guard Shaq one-on-one. People love to talk about Shaq averaging 36 plus points in the 2000 through 2002 NBA Finals despite being double and triple and quadruple teamed, but no one seems to talk about how he was largely single guarded in the 2004 Finals, averaging 26.6 points per game on 63%. Those are fantastic numbers on the surface, especially in that era, but it was because Ben Wallace spent most of that series guarding him by himself. We always see people mention how much more productive a superstar would be if they were single covered, and 26.6 is a disappointing amount given that. But it's also a testament to how well Ben Wallace guarded him, as he had the necessary strength to make it difficult for Shaq to get into his comfort spots. Because of that, the rest of the Pistons starting five could focus their attention on making Kobe's life miserable, and sometimes all it took was to just use Tayshaun Prince on him. Prince was Kobe's weakness. He was too tall, he was too long, too athletic for Kobe to get by or to get a clean shot off of. If Kobe was able to find an opening, he would be funneled to either of the Wallace, who both had the size and athleticism to suffocate any wing driving to the rim. Add on to Gary Payton being useless on both ends with age and injuries catching up, and Malone showing his age, and then Shaq struggling to get to his comfort spots with Ben on him, and often forced Kobe into hero mode. Hero mode saved the Lakers in Game 2, their only win in the series, but it was disastrous the rest of the series. Kobe was awful, and I won't defend it, as he was awful. I'm not denying that, but it was not the worst finals by a superstar given the strength of his opponent on defense and the time period, peak deadball era, and that Shaq also could have played better. I don't buy into this notion that Kobe was seeking glory over winning. People look at Shaq's production and assume that Kobe won the glory. Watching the games, which they don't do by the way, I saw a guy that couldn't get anything done and had no one else besides Shaq to rely on, who of course wasn't always in position to get high percentage looks due to the defense that Ben Wallace was playing. Maybe a separate view of his own one day, but this is a video glorifying the 2004 Pistons. They demolished the Lakers and shook up the sports world. They became NBA champs on June 15, 2004, exactly 20 years ago. They did it with a team of misfits, a team that at the time looked like it had 0 Hall of Famers and only one All-NBA caliber player in Ben Wallace. In retrospect, they were an accomplished group, with Billups and Ben Wallace both making the Hall of Fame alongside Larry Brown, and all 5 members either made multiple All-Star teams or multiple All-Defense teams. Mameo Core made an All-Star a few years later for the Jazz, and Corliss Williamson was a 6th Man of the Year winner in 2002. Perhaps the most notable backup on those teams was Darko Milicic, the man the Pistons drafted over Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in the legendary 2003 NBA Draft. Sometime in the near future, I will aim to make a video on the mid-2000s Pistons, but for now, I will end it on this. The 2004 Pistons are one of the most underrated champions ever. A team that no one believed in at the time, but a team that I believe could give any team in league history fits. Their team first and defense first mentality is essential for playoff basketball, and their offense was more potent than you would think. Cyber out.